Top of the morning, Dan, and in for Amy this morning, Jeannie Ives, former state legislator and gubernatorial candidate, now the principal at breakthrough-ideas.com and a host of The Real Story with Jeannie Ives, Sundays on these airwaves.
Thanks for having me in, Dan.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Boy, I'll tell you what, there's nothing like sticking to a story. Jim Clyburn, who's the Dem rep from South Carolina, perhaps the man principally responsible for Joe Biden's 2020 victory, helped him stem the decline of his candidacy in 2020 in South Carolina, turned it all around, led him to the nomination. Jim Clyburn, despite her interview, the portion that was released of the Biden-her interview from October of 2023, despite the announcement that President Biden had late-stage prostate cancer, something that seemingly must have been known well before this weekend when the news came out, like perhaps for years. And the timing of it coming out after the rehabilitation tour, then her audio comes out, now the announcement about the... Jim Clyburn not only saw no evidence of his cognitive decline. This is Clyburn yesterday with Tapper. Not only saw no evidence of his decline, he thinks right now Joe could still go another 4. That's a guy who's committed to a story.
No, I didn't. You know, the fact of the matter is, I saw Biden often, but not as often as people seem to think. I saw him, talked to him on the telephone very often, and I never saw anything that I thought was outside of the ordinary.
Do you think that Joe Biden really would have been able to perform as president all the way through January 2029 when he would be 86?
Yes, I thought that back then. I still think that, but I don't know that.
He still thinks he could serve out another term, but he doesn't know it.
Now he's raising questions about his own cognitive ability.
Well, he also does the whole, yeah, I didn't see any evidence, but, I only saw him in passing. We nodded across the hallway in the Capitol or something. Everybody was too busy to pay attention to the President of the United States and what his mental condition would be now. That's the story. Well, sure, I interacted with Gretchen Whitmer, the Eva Perón of East Lansing. I was his campaign co-chairman. I was out surrogating for him. But, we met a couple of times in passing, just sort of a grip and grin. And, so I didn't see anything. I was too busy worried about Michigan and registering people to vote. I mean, the spin is just painful to listen to, if you have some working synapses. But I know many people do not. For more on this and geopolitical matters, because I have a specific question for our friend Stephen Bucci. Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. And Stephen, I want you to recognize there is an officer on deck. Jeannie Ives is a West Point grad.
Outstanding. What class?
My kid outranks me now, though, so hey.
Which class were you?
I was class of 87. So was my husband. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I was class of 77.
All right.
Well,
the cheating scandal class.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Oh, what are you accusing Stephen Bucci of something?
No, not at all.
Oh,
no.
boy. All right. He's about to get chippy.
I was an honor rep. It totally screwed up my life, too, even though I wasn't in the scandal, but I was on the other side of it. It was not much fun.
Oof.
Well, speaking of the military, I mean, this is all fun fodder for the punditry inside the Beltway. I'm talking about her interview, which basically is just a compilation of what we knew to be true, what we saw in public, and then the announcement of prostate cancer, which is unfortunate, but I think there are legitimate questions about the timing of this disclosure. But now I go back to people talking about the president's ability to do the job. And of course, there was damage control. You know, I mean, Michelle Goldberg in the New York Times writing in February of 2024. So this is about the time that her report came out and 4 months after the interview. Biden's age is a campaign problem, not a governing one. I don't know how you draw those lines. And my question would be, now with you layering in the prostate cancer diagnosis, thinking about Mark Milley, thinking about Lloyd Austin, thinking about national security decision making, they had to have interaction with him. And if they didn't have interaction with him, if they had interaction with some intermediary and never were able to speak to the commander in chief, then that should have raised concerns. And I want to hear from Lloyd Austin and Mark Milley in particular, and Tony Blinken for that matter, about, you know, what they saw or knew or should have seen or should have known. Don't you?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I think it's interesting there that my fellow graduate had the same comment that came to mind about Clyburn to me. Well, if Clyburn really believes what the heck he's saying now, we need to get him checked cognitively, because he's obviously a little past his sell-by date, too. You know, this is just the Democratic Party in Washington seems to really think that the American people are that stupid and, you know, that compliant to their wishes that they can just lie this way. Look, I get it. If the guy in the office is getting a little off, you're going to try and make do. But it was clear and is clear to everybody. They knew about this well in advance. It wasn't a governing issue because they didn't need Joe Biden to make any real decisions. They were all making the decisions for him. I mean, this makes the Woodrow Wilson thing, laying in the bed with his wife running the country for a year, look small. This really clearly was going on essentially for the entire term Biden was in office. And I want to know who was making the final decisions. Was it Blinken? Was it Jake Sullivan? Was it, you know, some of the folks that we know are like unregistered agents of Iran that were all over that particular administration? Who was making the decisions here? It clearly wasn't Biden. You know,
well, and
wrong.
Well, and an additional reason why this is important, beyond the obvious, is there's this continuing reference to the people on the inner circle that were responsible for lying to everybody. They lied to members of Congress and they lied to the press corps. Well, who are they? I mean, if somebody was acting as a surrogate for the president making national security decisions, well, that person would then logically have to have known that the president wasn't capable of making those decisions, and so that person is complicit. But let's get some names out there and flesh this out.
Yeah, and no offense to the congressmen and all these other people all over Washington, but to sit there, you know, look, we all watched them on TV, just snippets, and we're all going, holy smoke, this is our president, even if you didn't vote for him, and I didn't, but, you know, you felt terribly for the individual. You were scared to death for the country because theoretically this guy's, you know, can push buttons. And all of these national level leaders elected and appointed, and all of them are, oh, well, no, I didn't notice anything about it. It seemed okay to me. I don't care if you only did pass him in the hallway of the Capitol. He had huge issues, and everybody should have known this. And we all did. The majority of the country did. That's why we voted the way we did in the last election. And the left still thinks, oh, no, it's not a big problem. Oh, we didn't see it. Jake Tapper's my favorite. You know, he was defending him, and now suddenly he's, you know, having the revelatory book that, you know, oh, here's the truth. Oh, thanks, Jake. So the rest of us figured it out a while ago. So this is, you're right. Bottom line is somebody needs to be called to accountability, and it doesn't seem like anybody's making the effort to do that as yet.
Do you think that Mark Milley called up his counterparts, adversarial or ally, and said, you know, just give all your questions to me. I'll handle it. Do you think Anthony Blinken did a Alexander Haig and said, "I'm in charge," famously when Reagan had to go to the hospital. Do you think that happened at all?
To be honest with you, as much as all that, bothered me the first couple of times it happened, with Haig and all that, I understood what Haig was saying. He was not saying he was taking over the government. He was saying, hey, everybody calm down. We've got everybody in place. He just made it too personal. But I think these folks, the Blinkens, the Sullivans, the Millies, and Truth in Advertising, Mark Milley's a friend of mine. But I got to tell you, it was clear that I hope they actually did that, because if they were directing those folks to Biden, they would have got the soup sandwich version of American foreign policy. But look, these folks are not supposed to take that authority. We didn't give it to them. The Constitution doesn't give it to them. They can't just say, okay, the president's a blathering idiot. We'll handle it for him. Come on.
Yeah, this is like Brezhnev quality disinformation. Comrade has a slight cold when he's laid out in the back room.
Exactly.
And by the way, did Mark Milley ever let you borrow his copy of White Fragility? I heard Robin DiAngelo signed it.
Mark Milley, when I knew him, we were majors together, we were colonels together. He's this robust hockey player, tough guy. He was a great young officer. Unfortunately, and I was thrilled when they made him the chairman. I thought he's going to be great. And then he got up there, and he swallowed the wrong color pill at some point and just went full DEI.
Just a little, side note here. When my son graduated from West Point in 2016, he was one of the top graduates. So we went down there right at the front, and we were looking to, gather around for a family picture. And General Milley was standing right there. He's like, "I'll take it." He took a great picture. So
he's not without skill. That's good to know.
Yeah, he did a good job as the chief for the Army, and then they brought him up to be the chairman. And at first, I thought he was going to be great. I thought he was a good choice for working with President Trump, because Milley is pretty straightforward. But boy, as soon as that he did his flip on the walk over to the chapel there, and and then once he was working for Biden, and boy, he just completely went straight over to the left on the DEI thing. And look, nobody with any sense thought DEI was a good idea. It was kind of, how bad did you think it was for the readiness of the military? And, Milley's unquestioning public support of that just was wrong. And he just, he dropped the ball when he got at that highest level. I don't know what was distracting him, but he did not fight the good fight for the military during those last couple of years.
Trump sat down with Brett Baer on Friday upon return from the Middle East, and had this to say about Iran.
Next one's going to be, the N-word. You know what the N-word is, right?
Nuclear.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
I figured you'd want to clean that up. No, it's the N-word. That's a very nasty word, right? In a lot of ways. The N-word used in a nuclear sense, that's the worst thing that can happen.
And Rubio followed up on that, saying that we neither want war with nor nuclear weapons for Iran. What is the prospect that is an achievable position?
It's potentially achievable, but in my opinion, that's a pretty big stretch. The Iranians are not going to negotiate away their nuclear weapons program. They'll sit and they'll negotiate, but it's all just assembling. It's all delaying. It's just typical Persian negotiating techniques at which they're pretty good. Actually, they're way better than our people that we keep sending to talk to them.
And just in point of fact,
don't have to nuke them, but it is a big possibility.
Well, I know this is all posturing and saber rattling, but just to update, the Iran's foreign minister, enrichment in Iran is not something that can be stopped.
Yeah.
So that's pretty straightforward.
Well, not with negotiations. I would agree with what he's saying, It can be stopped, though, but it's going to take a pretty robust effort. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to nuke them. We have we have some devices, non-nuclear devices, that can get in there and do the level of damage necessary to take it out. But it's not going to go, shoot a missile at one location and everything's done. It's going to take the U.S. and Israel and hopefully some other allies to decide, you know what, we can't afford to let them do this. We tried being nice, but the only other option is to be really not nice. And that's going to be sad for the country of Iran. I won't lose any sleep over the regime disappearing, but it's just going to kill some civilians. There's no doubt about that. And but we'll do our best to minimize it. But it's going to be a sad day for the people of Iran, and shame on the United States, because we have not in the past helped the nascent resistance to that regime anywhere near sufficiently to help them make a change. But it's going to be very, very difficult to deal with the aftermath.
Your view on this report about a possible plan to move upwards of 1 million Gazans to Libya, and ostensibly as a reward for taking 1 million Gazans, the terrorists du jour in charge in Libya will get some of their assets unfrozen and so forth.
This has been tried before, and the Gazans or the Palestinians in general never say yes. They've had this offer. The closest they ever came was a bunch of them going to Jordan, and they screwed that up because they decided to try and kill the king's father. And the king's father turned out not to be the nice, smiley guy everybody thought he was, and he basically ripped them apart and kicked them out. That plan, frankly, will fail on the Gazans. They're going to not deal with that. They're not going to accept it. And, that's a nice thought, but I don't think it's achievable. They will never agree to that.
The Romanian election, it looks like the sort of conservative populist is not going to win. I talked to a friend of mine out that way, and he said, because there's all sorts of acrimony and allegations about the French, in particular, Macron meddling in that election, and the EU meddling in that election to prevent the conservative populists from winning. My friend also said, though, who's an expert on politics out there, former Foreign Service, that he scared some voters away. The establishment really promoted the fear factor, and it seems to have worked. But even if that's the case, and with it some air support from other European countries, I know we're not so naive as to believe that other countries don't meddle in other countries' elections, ourselves included. But as the EU tries to slow down, if not reverse, this sort of populist revolt that's been bubbling up and happening in Europe really since Brexit, what should the posture of the Trump administration be towards that sort of meddling by, if the allegations are true, for example, the French?
We can sit and condemn it. We can push back against them. Those countries are going to go meddle where they feel it's in their interest to do so. And as you point out, we do the same thing. But I think that the bureaucrats of Europe are pushing the rock uphill, and it's going to roll down on them here shortly. Now, I have to say, I was disappointed with that result. I was also disappointed with the results in Albania. I thought we were going to go back to a non-Soros directed and funded government there. The Soros folks are a big part of this, by the way, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. You just got to follow the money. They are the ones funding this. Macron may be providing some political support, but this is a direct attempt to keep Europe moving in a leftward direction. And the Trump administration needs to let our assets, our intelligence folks, hopefully our new State Department, because under Rubio it's very different than it was under Blinken, to make the effort to push back against these guys and to support people that are going to support our interests and hopefully get theirs in alignment with it. So there's a lot to be done, and the Trump administration hopefully is at least planning, if not executing, the effort to do that. But we'll have to wait and see how far they're willing to go.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer, top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thank you as always.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, and we'll talk to you next time.
All right, and Stephen joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
The more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer. Are you an administrator, staff member, or parent volunteer at a private school? Would you like to grow your current enrollment and welcome new families?